I'm not usually very good at this. I remember a couple of things in the past. One, when I was a youngster in church, I had on Mother's Day, I remember a 3-line poem to commemorate Mother's Day in church, and I practiced on it for a week. Thought I had it down pat, and got in front of the church to give the presentation, and I froze. I can say the passage today right now, word for word. I can't say a thing, so this is not really my thing to do, to stand before the. But I get such a compassion for a home. I think I'm going to really enjoy doing this because, as Julie said, my first involvement with the home was right after I joined the lodge in 1958. We had a committee at that time at the lodge. The structure was a little different on the missions of the home at that time, and the lodges sponsored the members who came in my home, the widows, orphans, and masons who came in the two homes. Then the lodge had to do preliminary inspection, investigation, so I served on that committee. I didn't get involved totally with the homes until the early 70s when I was appointed Grand Lodge officer, and then from that time on until I was elected to the board in 1982. And I've served on the board ever since in both boards, as a matter of fact. Anyway, that's a short history of that. But we're going to show this film in the first few minutes of it. It's a film that was done a few years ago by the alumni, and it gives a pretty good history of a home from the perspective of the residents that were here. But the first part of it shows a little history about the first home, and that was the one that was located down north of Avery Street between 1st and 2nd Street when the initial building was built. I'll have more to say about that a little later, but you want to start the film there and show this first part of it?
Sweet Memories, the Masonic Home, dedicated to the old home kids, June 28, 2003. As a result of the Civil War, the idea was conceived of building a home to care for families of deceased Masons. Many needy widows and orphans had been left behind by those Masons who had fought for the North and South. In November of 1866, Brother Thomas L. Jefferson Sr. and a small group of Masons gathered in Louisville, Kentucky, and adopted a resolution to build a Masonic widows and orphans home. Henry Fink gave $1,000 to begin a fund for this new home. A plot of ground at 2nd and Avery Streets was donated by Mr. T.T. Shreve for the first Masonic home of its kind in the world. The doors were thrown open for the reception of children in April of 1871, when the north wing was completed. However, a tornado demolished the center and the towers of the complex when it was near completion in 1875. With renewed energy, the Masons of Kentucky soon replaced every brick and stone, and in 1878, the building in its entirety was dedicated. In the following years, the home progressed rapidly. Religious training was always an important part of the home. Of course, education was always of utmost importance. At first, the children were sent to the Louisville public schools, but as the number of children increased, the home established a school of its own. Practical industries such as printing were created to train the widows and orphans and provide needed commodities to hold down costs. Shoemaking and repairing, gardening, and cooking were also taught, as was manual training. The girls were taught sewing, typewriting, and stenography. Because of these industries, it was possible for years to hold the per capita costs down to $100. Indeed, the Masonic home on 2nd and Avery Streets was a blessing to many hundreds of children and widows. As the superintendent said at the golden anniversary of the home, the Masonic Widows and Orphans Home is the brightest jewel in the crown of Kentucky, and it is dear to the heart of every Mason in Kentucky. But by 1918, the home was becoming inadequate to care for the large number of children who were left orphaned and sometimes homeless due to the great influenza epidemic and the death of many U.S. soldiers in World War I. In 1917, a 127-acre site on Frankfort Avenue, midway between the city limits of Louisville and St. Matthews, was purchased for just over $94,000. Building proceeded rapidly, and in less than 2 years, a new home was completed. And in August of 1927, the residents bade goodbye to the old home on 2nd Street. When the children returned from vacation in the fall of 1927, the new home was ready. 16 beautiful buildings were occupied by children and widows. During the late 1920s and 1930s, the number of children living at the home grew rapidly. Reports from each cottage and grade were included in the Masonic Home Journal. Many excerpts from the journals follow. Jack Martin reported from Cottage 2. David Webb has just returned from the infirmary after bumping into a bedpost and getting the mumps. Albert Johnson reported from Cottage 3. The painters who have been painting the other buildings came to start on Cottage 3. Fred Staton was the first one to put his hand in the wet paint. And Marie Upchurch reported, "They have completed a concrete walk from the infirmary to the dining hall. It is so nice we are almost afraid to walk on it. Mr. Garnett, on one of his frequent visits, said that if we don't step lively on it, he will take it away." In January of 1930, there were 46 widows, 284 boys, and 297 girls living at the home. Miss Laura Johnson arrived at the home that fall. There were 43 pupils in her room. No one knew at that time what an impact she would have on the children who lived at the home for decades to come. 1931 was a big year for sports on the home campus. The football team worked hard at practice and during games. In December of 1932, there were 5 sets of twins at the home: the Davises, the Clarks, the Provines, the Berries, and the Weathers. An announcement from the infirmary: all of the children who have not had their tonsils removed were examined the first of the month by Dr. Baker. Since then, we have been very busy getting ready for the operations, which will begin Tuesday. Some of the little boys will have an additional operation. Spelling Bee news: Mabel Brummett has won the 1933 Jefferson County Spelling Bee. This is the home's 4th time to compete for the Courier-Journal Spelling Bee plaque, and we were successful in 3 of the 4 contests. Harold Spruill won 2 consecutive times. Pearl Ferguson from the infirmary reported, "We will start giving cod liver oil on the 18th of the month." The girls from the dining room reported, "We've been instructed on how to arrange the tables, and we've discussed report cards and the honor roll. At the end of each school year, an initial ring will be awarded to the 2 girls having the best kept table and the best conduct. Every girl will start trying for the ring the very first day." In 1933, a new popcorn company came to the home. David Long and Leo Medley formed the company. These 2 thrifty boys worked hard all summer cleaning automobiles and doing odd jobs. They've purchased an up-to-date electric popcorn machine. They deliver the corn around the campus in a small wagon. April 1934, Spelling Bee report. Betty Chamberlain, champion speller for the Masonic Home, left last Friday evening for the Jefferson County contest, and she said, "We'll take the Courier-Journal spelling plaque with us, but we'll bring it back." At 10:45 that night, the residents of the home knew by the toot-toot-tooting of the truck and the hilarious manner of the returning party that Betty was indeed the champion speller of Jefferson County. Some of the boys in Cottage 3, Howard Hayes, Jolie Rose, Chester Vest, Pryor McCullough, James Sandlin, Klein Nolan, Lloyd Strickland, and Harold Terry, had the time of their lives when they were permitted to put on their cowboy suits and carry their toy revolvers. A triple wedding took place in May of 1935. A triple Tom Thumb wedding, that is. Oh Promise Me was sung by Vera Wilcox. Dropping rose petals as she walked down the aisle was the flower girl, Betty Jo Brasfield. The brides were Dorothy Strickland, Ruby Johnson, and Virginia Horton. The grooms were Lloyd Strickland, Davy Lee Horton, and Ross Cox. A beautifully appointed lunch followed later in the artistically decorated dining room. Beulah Frances Clark filed this report from the ironing room. There are about 60 girls who had the opportunity to learn how to iron well during this year. Many of the girls are trying for the ironing room prize to be given at the end of the year. Farm report. The farm class entered 11 exhibits and took 6 prizes at the state fair. The one that stands out above all others is the Blue Ribbon Prize on Certified Irish Cobblers. Alfalfa also won an award, as did sorghum cane seed. The boys will have produced enough sorghum to make approximately 400 gallons of molasses. May 1937. News from Miss White at the infirmary. Because of the generous sunshine and warm weather, cod liver oil is not necessary now. April 1937. Spelling Bee report. We've done it again! The Masonic Home has sent a representative to the Jefferson County Spelling Bee for the past 8 years. Out of those 8 years, we have provided 5 first-place winners. This year, Ellen Chamberlain won first place. Ellen's sister Betty won the championship in 1934. Congratulations, Ellen. May 1937. From the infirmary. Warren Cassida has eluded Miss White and the doctors for 10 years with his tonsils, but alas, he has been captured. Along with Jack and Donald Keeney, Pierce and Charles Stanley, James Emmix, Milburn Nolan, and Jackie Rice, Warren has been relieved of these pestiferous lymphoid masses. June 1937. James Lafferty was caught by a photographer at the St. John's Day League picnic, attempting to talk Mrs. Smith out of her free tickets to ride on amusement rides at Fountain Ferry Park. His argument that Lindy planes and Ferris wheels are for kids seems to be winning him points and about to earn him a few extra tickets. January 1938. Juliet Holton reports on the primary grades. One of the favorite pastimes of our kindergartners is knitting on spools. Kenneth Logsden is head instructor. He is always very much in demand with each new knitter. April 7th, 1938. This day marks the most outstanding event that has ever occurred in the history of our Boy Scout troop. Vernon Edwards and Edwin Uhl were proud recipients of their hard-earned Eagle Scout badges presented by Major General Allen W. Gullion, Judge Advocate General of the U.S. Army, Washington, D.C. The entire school and faculty turned out to witness this ceremony. Sports news. Softball seems to be the favorite sport for the larger boys, but the small boys prefer shinny, and they sure do keep Miss White busy fixing up black eyes. Report from Cottage 3. Miss Barber has 2 little chairs and a table. When a little boy has a birthday, he gets to invite a little girl to have a party. Lonnie Johnson had a birthday, and he invited Wilma Jean Cox to help him celebrate. Reports from the Masonic Journal and Miss Johnson's diary continue. January 1940. Cottage 7 report. The girls who haven't any galoshes got some new ones to wear while the snow is on the ground and when it rains. Mr. Morris is keeping a bottle of castor oil in his pocket, and he's going to give everyone he catches without their galoshes on a dose of it. You can easily guess whether we'll keep them on or not. Spring 1940. Sports news. Mr. Morris gave us a softball on Thursday, and by Saturday the corners were knocked off and insides torn up. That shows the interest we took in that sport. We are looking forward to the track meet this weekend. Most of us think Archie Grant will win all the dashes. April 1941. Vida Davis reports from the 10th grade. As we are nearing the end of school, we are beginning to organize our class play. The girls have almost finished their dresses. They are made of white dotted Swiss and are trimmed with Irish crochet. We are real proud of them and think they are very pretty. Infirmary Spotlight. 3 boys from Cottage 3 had their tonsils removed. Frank Moore, Paul Shepard, and George Knipp. Pictured are some others who look like likely prospects. Sports Report. William T. Staton reporting. Our basketball team has played 1 game since our loss to St. Joseph's before the holidays. We played Ormsby Village and set them down 21-9. Samuel Horton was high point man while Captain Leo Boggs went into a slump and scored only 3 points. His little brother, who isn't hardly big enough to hold a ball, threw one through the basket for 2 points. Sports news. The Has-Beens were beaten 30-0 by the Wilbys. The stars for the Wilbys were Flash Staton and Rome Speedy Sample. The stars for the Has-Beens were Cyclone Miller, Cotton Shadowin, and B. Flutie. March 1943. Howard Hayes reports. Kenneth Roberts, Oral Brown, and Edwin Uhl are just a few of the many old home kids who are fighting for our freedom. The Masonic Home Guild of Kentucky pledged to keep the home fires burning while so many were away. The names and addresses of those serving their country were posted regularly in the Masonic Home Journal. Spring Exercises 1943. The graduates of 1943 enjoyed their commencement exercises very much. A large audience showed its appreciation when the pretty girls and good-looking boys marched through the arch of roses to their places on the beautifully decorated stage. As usual, the girls wore dainty white dresses of their own handiwork and carried colorful arm bouquets. The large flag with 175 stars to honor our boys and girls in the service added much to the impressive scene. The musical numbers by the class were unusually well done, and the solo by G.C. Miller was especially pleasing, as his dancing has been throughout the years. Sunday, April 23, 1944. A historic presentation took place in the chapel in Garnet Hall. A Hammond electric organ was donated to the home. Miss Jean Easterling will be the first pupil to learn to play the instrument. Spring 1944. The class of 44 will be missed greatly by everyone at the home. It consisted of 10 boys and 5 girls. Their achievements and services rendered have been many. It was a versatile class. 8 of the 10 boys were on the basketball team. All of the girls went out for hockey, and much leadership in the Christian Endeavor program has come from this class. The first annual was printed in the printing office this year. It was called The Graduator. From the music department, we presented a wonderful evening of music in Garnet Hall. Among other performances, the full orchestra performed March of the Crusaders. The class of 1945 planned and worded the entire program for the closing exercises that year. At the conclusion of the program, the class, although justly proud of their alma mater, decided to leave a few recommendations for Mr. Caswell to ponder over during summer vacation. Their suggestions included radios in each room, elevators rather than steps, oriental rugs in the halls, mathematics eliminated from the schedule completely, more fried chicken, telephones in every room, swimming pools, and an orchestra playing special dance music all the time. The class also planted the traditional class tree. The teachers of 1945. What a great group. In the fall of 1946, Mr. Goheen became superintendent and principal of the school. And early in 1947, the decision was made to advance the high school curriculum to a 4-year program. In 1947, new record player radios were given to the children at the home by Louisville Lodge 400. The children were absolutely thrilled. Also in 1947, Miss Wilma Brown, at the age of 15, won second prize in the 12th annual nationwide essay contest sponsored by the Ladies Auxiliary of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. The subject of her essay, Home, Cradle of Good Citizenship. October 1948. Mr. Brown came to inspect the cannery equipment he had donated a few years ago. He was glad when he learned we had canned more than 3,000 gallons of corn, tomatoes, tomato juice, kraut, green beans, beets, apples, applesauce, and pickles. It takes 20 boys and girls to complete the preparation and operation of canning any product. Miss Dorothy Mullins, Miss Ruby Souter, and Miss Betta Barker are putting tomatoes, raised by the home farm, in gallon cans and placing tops on them before they reach the machine that automatically seals them. 1948. Exciting news from the sports department. The Masonic Home High School girls hockey team won the Jefferson County High School tournament and brought home a beautiful bronze prize. The school admires this fine team. More news from the sports department. Both the A and B basketball teams had a great year. Principal players on the A team were Bob Ramage and Belden Boggs as forwards, Jerry Lange at center, Buddy Southard and Frank Moore playing guards. These are all top-notch players, 3 of whom will graduate this year. However, the B team has several promising prospects for the first string next season. They are Billy Easterling, Junior Neely, Tim Rogers, all bucking for the forward positions, Kenneth Logston at center, Lawson Shattuck, and Lewis McGuire, guards. As the 40s drew to an end, there were many activities going strong at the home. The smaller grades were doing just fine. The upper grades were growing up quickly. Robert Ramage was on the job at the print shop. Junior Neely was busy in the kitchen. R.H. Souter was working on the farm. The girls continued to fine-tune their home economic skills. The acting department was as busy as ever. And the music department continued to flourish. And the class of 1949 became the first class to graduate from high school at the Masonic Homes School. Because this was the first service of its kind to be held at the home, it was particularly meaningful for everyone. At commencement exercises, the class of 1949 marched to the stage under arches of roses held by undergraduates while the orchestra played Pomp and Circumstance. The 1949-1950 school year was quite a year. The children were involved with the full orchestra and string orchestra, the chorus, boys quintet, girls trio, 5 shades of blue and a touch of gold, a flute duet, and a trumpet trio. The dramatic arts department learned about expressions and expressed them quite well. Christian Endeavor played a very important part in the lives of the home kids, as did the Boy Scouts. Of course, sports was a favorite, as always. The varsity Wildcat basketball team was led by center Lanky Logston. The junior varsity team had a good year too, and the cheerleaders were there every step of the way. And there were a few parties that school year that stand out, in particular one Halloween gathering. The pictures tell it all. The class of 1950, with 5 boys and 5 girls, was indeed a wonderful group of talented kids. The 1950-51 school year was another busy one. The hockey team took 4th place in the Jefferson County Hockey League. Mr. Goheen resigned in 1951 to become Commissioner of Welfare for the state of Kentucky. The various vocational departments continued to thrive. Pee Wee King and his band stopped by to entertain, which was a thrill for children of all ages. The senior class officers in 1951 were Gerald Tarvin, President, Dorothy Mullins, Vice President, Margaret Greer, Secretary, and Mary Ann Hall, Treasurer. The class of 1951 consisted of 20 graduates. The top students in the class of 52 were Ruth LaVonna Brown, Ardith Sue Ramage, and Hallie Jean Coffey. Helen Delph had been at the home the longest of the class, 15 and a half years, and William Glenn Bloodworth had been at the home for 14 years. The senior class that year chose to present Tempest and Sunshine as their senior play. All played their parts so well that little Janie Barker cried long after the play was over because she thought Glenn Bloodworth and Sue Ramage had died in the play. 14 boys and girls graduated from Masonic Home High School in 1952. In the fall of 1952, Miss Johnson reported, "This year, the first, second, and third grade classes are small, but they are very, very talented, and they keep their house mothers very, very busy." At Thanksgiving, Mary Sue Owen, Edward Shackelford, and William Brown showed off Tom Turkey, who had escaped the chopping block. Actually, the Junior Red Cross members of Mr. Jackson's art class made the turkey and stuffed it with small gifts. Then it was taken to the Fort Knox Hospital and given to the patients there. The 1952-53 basketball team went to the regional finals coached by Alan Cash, staging the biggest upset in Kentucky basketball by whipping the favored LaGrange in the district tournament. The determined Wildcats went into the regional tournament as runner-up from the district. They beat the district champs in the first game of the regional and faced another highly favored team, Owen County, in the semifinals. As the buzzer sounded, Benny Rogers dropped in 2 points, and the final score read Masonic 56, Owen County 54. Only one game away from the state tournament, the Wildcat team faced an extremely tall and accurate Shelbyville team in the finals and lost 61-52. But what an unbelievable season. Marvy Bloodworth, Shirley Ramage, Viva Harper, Jean Stepp, and Jean Barker inspired the Wildcat team throughout the season. They won the title of Cheer Champs of the 29th District. An exciting year indeed for the class of 53. The 5th class of Masonic Home in 1953 chose as their motto, "Enter to learn, depart to serve." In the fall of 1953, Clint Fugit reported in the Junior Journal column of the Masonic Home Journal, "Mrs. Sutton is instructing Martin Nowak on an instrument that is bigger than he is." Reporting on the Grand Lodge of 1953. For the first time, twin boys, Gary and Larry Hall, represented the student body at Masonic Home School and presented the Grand Master with red roses. In May of 1954, the last commencement exercises to be held at the Masonic Home School were conducted. The class had 10 members. The elementary and high schools at the Masonic Home closed that year because of the decreasing number of pupils. The 100 or so children at the home planned to attend the Jefferson County schools that fall. Miss Laura Johnson remained at the home to direct homework and extracurricular activities of the children. Although the school year in 1954-55 was different because the kids went to public school, most activities at the home stayed just about the same. Judith Gish and Minnie Wade went to Girl Scout camp. 2 second graders, Betty Carolyn Moore and Martin Nowak, took a wonderful trip to New York City and Washington, D.C., having been chosen by the Chenoweth Elementary School PTA and sponsored by an anonymous donor. Upon her return, Betty commented, "Yes, travel broadens one." Mr. V.V. Cook donated a calf to the home to be fed and conditioned by the farm boys. James Bowling and Max Simpson are welcoming the new calf. The class of 1955 was the first class from the Masonic Home to graduate from a public school. 1955-56 school year. Sports report. Ed Whitey Shackelford, 5'8", 155-pound senior guard on the Eastern Eagle basketball squad, received a trophy during the Louisville Invitational Tournament. Eastern had another Masonic Home youngster on the starting five, 6'1", 168-pound senior forward, Harold Ramage. Miss Johnson writes, I am especially proud to write about Joanne Athington. She was received into the National Honor Society at Eastern High School on March 1st. Joanne is the first Masonic Home student to receive this honor. I am also proud to report that Roland Wade received the only Key Award at Eastern High School. His entry in the Scholastic Art Competition was a lead pencil drawing. In the summer of 1956, superintendents from Masonic homes around the nation gathered in Louisville for a meeting. Judy Gish wrote the following: My sisters and I had the pleasure of going to the Brown Hotel to sing for the Masonic home superintendents. We sang Mockingbird Hill. During the school year of 1956-57, the home kids continued to excel. 10 years ago, a little girl of 7 years entered the Masonic home school. Little did Marcella Dickinson dream at that time that she would go with the Eastern High School Band to be in the inaugural parade for President Eisenhower in Washington, D.C. There were 10 seniors who graduated in 1957. In 1958, 6 Masonic home kids graduated from Eastern. The class was treated to dinner at the Brown Suburban, compliments of the mayor. At the time of graduation in 1959, Miss Johnson wrote, 9 students are graduating from Eastern High School this year. In March of 1960, Brother Harry Pop Curry retired after 26 years as the chief engineer at the home. Pop says he knows every valve on the place by its first name and feels like he's leaving an old friend, but he is looking forward to taking things easy after all these years of hard work. 8 seniors graduated in 1960. Activities at the home continued to be numerous and well-rounded. There were 21 boys in the Boy Scout troop. Tommy Spann received his trail certificate from advisor Ben Harris. Miss Johnson reported, 4 of our girls, Linda Sweet, Judy Gish, Mary Sweet, and Carolyn Moore, sang Cherry Blossom Lane in the senior class vaudeville, Showbiz USA. The All-County Festival performers included Emma Lou Dickinson, Doug Metcalf, Mary Sweet, Brenda Swan, Judy Gish, and Nancy Bowling. In the spring, Jewel Barker gave the welcome speech for the awards day ceremony. She began with, 14 years ago, a little dark-haired, dark-eyed 3-year-old girl came to this home to live. And then, as she unfolded the story, added, that little girl was me, and every one of those 14 years have endeared this place to me. This is the only home I've ever known. 7 young men and women graduated in 1962. 3 young people graduated in 1963 and left the home for the more adult phase of their lives. In 1965, 7 more students graduated from high school. One of the graduates, Serena Blanton, said, I have loved spending 15 years at this wonderful home. I was the youngest of a big family, and I was happy to be here with lots of brothers and sisters. In 1966, 3 young ladies graduated from high school. And in 1967, 2 more talented young people graduated. This was the 67th class of graduates from the Masonic home. In 1969, 4 successful graduates left the home. In 1970, an article was written in the Courier-Journal about the Masonic home, calling it a big farm in the middle of a city. At the time the article was written in 1970, the youngest resident was 4 and the oldest 102, and there were approximately 32 kids living on campus. In 1970, the home had 2 graduates, and there was 1 in 1971 and 1 in 1972. By 1973, there were only about 26 children living at the home. 1974 and 1975 were big years for Miss Jean Klinkenbeard. She presented the red roses to the Grand Master during Grand Lodge and was chosen the St. John's Day League mascot in 1975. In 1976, the 14 children who lived at the home carried on the long tradition by performing for the Grand Lodge in October. Christmas continued to be a fun time for the home kids, especially the little ones. In June of 1978, 12 children were living at the home. During Homecoming Day in 1979, Miss Laura Johnson was honored with a special presentation. Miss Johnson taught and guided many hundreds of children through their school days at the home and into adulthood. She helped them understand and realize their potential, and she gently pushed them to excel in all they strive to do. During the 1980s, the last few children grew up and left the home.
A retired Army surgeon who conceived the idea. His name is Gibby, Sergeant Gibby, and he was a Mason. He developed the idea. And at that time, and as is today, as far as the Grand Lodge is concerned, only past masters are permanent members of the Grand Lodge, so he had no standing in the Grand Lodge, and he turned his idea over to Richardson, and that group passed the resolution. So I just want to make that correction. I want to kind of give you a little history about the fraternity and what values that the Masons put on charity and looking after the widows and orphans and the needy brethren. Masonry came into Kentucky before Kentucky was ever a state. There were a number of lodges chartered, Grand Lodge of Virginia, Lexington, Georgetown, Paris, Sheffield, and Frankfort, prior to Kentucky being a state. And Masonic fraternities always taught charity to everyone, and more especially to their brethren and their needy brethren, and especially to the widow and orphans. And that's what planted the seed in Brother Gibbons' mind when the idea he conceived of Masonic Home, which incidentally was one of the first kind in the United States and most possibly the world, because at that time there was no known home similar to what was the Masonic Order erected down Agric Street. So it was it led to many other Grand Lodges forming Masonic homes. That's what it prompted this operation. The home is set up separate from the Grand Lodge, although the Grand Lodge it's just a matter of past industry. The Grand Lodge of Kentucky, FNAM, is a corporation in itself. Masonic Homes Kentucky is a corporation within itself. However, it's governed by a board of directors that is elected by the Grand Lodge of Kentucky, and by the lodges that are in the Grand Lodge of Kentucky, the representatives of each lodge. So that's how the home operates, but it operates generally separate from the Grand Lodge, except for the fact that its directors are elected by the Grand Lodge. I did want to, this entrance with the archway was dedicated by Lee Craig. He was a member of the board here about the time the home came to Louisville. But the home in downtown Louisville, when it was kind of interesting because the funny, am I getting too loud with this thing? The funds were generated and the home was paid for in short order. But it wasn't done at one time. Those buildings came one after the other as the need arose. They started with the main building, which you see on the film, and as the need arose for different issues, then that building was built. There was a chapel built later, a school building built later, a generating plant, and so forth, until 1918, when the one thing on the home, the reason that they gave for the first home being built was the Civil War created a lot of casualties among a lot of people and Masons also. And I read somewhere, I can't vouch for its authenticity, but I read somewhere that almost half of the casualties on the Confederate side of the conflict were Kentuckians. I don't know how many were Masons, but a great number were Kentuckians. So that prompted Brother Gary's pushing for the construction of the home. As the census developed in the home and more people, and mostly at that time there were mostly children, young kids, and a few adults, which changed over time. But at that time there were, I think if I remember, there was something like 400 to 500 children in the home in Louisville, downtown Louisville, and about 50 adults. So that need increased. So more and more needs came to that kind of operation. So in 1918, Brother James Garnett was the Grand Master at the time and served as a superintendent of the home for quite a while. He and his wife Julie. He passed a resolution at that time to form a committee to investigate another site within 7 miles of the city of Louisville. That was one of the stipulations, with over 100 acres, to secure a site to build a new, secure, fully operational home. So that's how they ended up with the site here. They bought 111 and a half acres, I think, 111 and a half acres, and later bought 115, about 15 and a half other acres, to make it 127 acres. And that's when they started the building. There was some more property bought later. At one time, the property extended from Franklin Avenue all the way to Brownsboro Road until there was some property deeded over to the school to build the school sometime later on Brownsboro Road. So that property was, they were all built at the same time. The arch was put on it later. There's a kind of an arch there now. But Lee Craig wanted to donate the first entrance here. But they were all these buildings were built at the same time. The infirmary, the utility buildings, all the cottages. There were, one cottage is gone. Two cottages were going to be taken down, and I may be a little ahead of the story. Cottage 3 and cottage 4 were due for demolition when we constructed the pillars. What we did, we sold 93 acres off the back of the property. At that time, as I said earlier, the need for the children, they were all gone. All the kids, home kids, were gone. 3 left. The Buckners, their names, they left in 1989. A few years later, the state wouldn't renew our license for the orphanage, so we lost those with the understanding we'd get it back with the media roads, but it never happened again because those needs went away. Aid to dependent children and all the benefits that were available to widows, I think, changed that. And we ended up with about 200 widows here, a little over 200 widows that were housed in a couple of cottages that were not fit for that purpose. And none of the cottages met code for that kind of operation at that time, so something had to be done to get them in a secure place that met code. So that's problem we were faced with at that time. So the farm, the back property we sold was used early on when all the young kids were here, as a farm to raise crops. They had cattle back there, and they had a cannery, and they raised the food, canned it, and like the other operations here, with all the young men and women that were here at a young age at that time, they have all the child labor laws and restrictions we have today, so they all learned a trade, and there were all kinds of trades. There was some nursing staff trained some of the ladies who were interested in that kind of thing in the nursing field. They had sewing classes, cooking classes, and the print shop. There were a number of printers that went to the print shop, and we had a number of them that stayed on and worked at the printing shop until it was closed in the last several years. The print shop closed. When we started, it was expanding the villages, but it was a kind of a vocational school, so to speak.
Was this a dairy farm before Masonic Home bought it?
No, it was just an open field. When
Empty.
it was nothing here. St. Matthews wasn't. It wasn't even part of Louisville at the time, I don't think. I know this wasn't, not about St. Matthews, but no, it was just open as well. When we sold the property, we built the pillars to move those widows into it for a more secure place, which was so then that left the other two cottages empty. As you know, if you look back, and I don't know how many are familiar with the campus back during the 80s, later 80s, when these buildings were deteriorating and beginning to fall down. We the board was faced with a dilemma on what to do about the homes. And there was no financing, or endowment funds were set up. There was no funds ever, any fund that financed the home, both here in Shelbyville, came from the craft and funds that they raised and donations that were donated to the home for that purpose. There were no government funds that came into it whatsoever, nothing at all. It was all self-sufficient. Medicare came along later on. We were operating the home in Shelbyville. Was another corporation at that time, two corporations, Old Mason's Homes Kentucky Incorporated and Widows and Orphans Homes Incorporated. And that got to be kind of a challenge with the operation. So in 1993, the board decided to merge the two homes. And we took that before the craft got approval, and we merged them into the Masonic Homes Kentucky. So at that point, we started taking Medicare and Medicaid partially. We had licensed some of the beds in Shelbyville, some of the beds here, and started taking Medicare and Medicaid because we had residents in there that qualified for it, and it was just a loss not to take it at that time. So we did, and then we had to decide what to do before our endowment funds were exhausted. So we looked at several plans the board did, and worked quite diligently trying to find some clear path to take to the security of homes. So we came up with the plan for the villages to we qualified for tax credits, didn't use them, so we could get rid of those through the bank, sold through the bank. So we were able to finance a loan through the bank to renovate the first three buildings for affordable housing for the elderly. That puts us on the path, put the board on the path to move into 3 more buildings later. So we ended up with 6 buildings in 2 different phases to get financially stable before we can move on with the food building, Garnet Hall, and the other cottages. And we changed our board structure from to a corporate setting, from the CEO and the corporate office, corporate structure. And to take what we were trying to do, the board was trying to operate the homes through two supervisors, two administrators, two homes, which didn't make a lot of sense. I was going to work with 21 different people, and that's what the board consisted of. So the idea was to set up a corporate office and get the CEO to deal with the board, and the CEO was, so that's what we did. And that put us on the path to start doing what we did here with Mirror League. We had our eye on that infirmary. That was what the board was really interested in at that time, was trying to replace that infirmary. It served its purpose. It was a good, it was done, state of the art when it was done. It was added 2 or 3 times, had 3 additions put on it. But it done outlived its usefulness. So, but the funding again was a problem, so we had to work with trying to get the financing to do it. So instead of going in that direction, we did the Sproutings first. There was an effort and a thought to try to get some kids back on campus. So it was historically noted for that kind of operation. So it was felt that would be a good thing to do. So we kind of entered a partnership with the Crochet Shrine, Crochet Charities, and went in that direction. So then the next step, we went with the Solar Care Center, and we got a state-of-the-art full care facility. So that was what I say there was a couple of board members that I mentioned, Dr. Robert Serpent and Marlon White, who bought the businessman down Bowling Green, that were very instrumental in getting all that done on the board. They didn't live to see it done, and I'm sorry that they didn't, but I know they would really be proud of the Sports Center. And then the next step was the independent living, Mirror League. So that was a real step out. I'm really, I think very much proud of that. This ad and didn't follow up with the method. So it's been a long operation to get where we are right now. There's been a lot of people involved, so a lot of good people. They're not here any longer, but I'm trying to find something I know you're interested in. I hate to bore you up here with just my view of things. If you've got something on your mind, go ahead and ask me. I'll do the best with you, because I don't have anything planned specifically. You've got the timeline there for what happened.
On the infirmary when it was tore down, we happened to be here at that time. One of the construction people says they really used a whole lot of concrete in it, much more than they needed to. And that same comment was made on my floors after we had the fire and they had to take it down of how thick the foundation was. And the guy wondered if I had stopped in the concrete company.
Well, that was a good point, because when we took down the cottage forward, and that was the one next to Wilson Hall. If you notice, the campus was built kind of in horseshoe thick,
Yeah.
And there were identical buildings on each side, but they had a twin on the other side. The one on the east side, which was the girls' were house, and the one on the west side, where the boys' house, they had a twin on each side. But when we were able to save cottage 3 by taking one of the wings of the pillar and moving part of that wing onto another wing, and shortening one wing and making the other. After the construction made, after the architects had accepted, made the plans. But the wrecking company that came in to take down the cottages hit that building, I don't know how many times with that ball, and didn't budget. And they had to go back to Cincinnati, around Cincinnati, come back with the heavy equipment and the bigger ball. And they finally got it down. But when they first started it just didn't happen. I'm sorry we had to take that cottage down too, because we could have use that later on. But at that time, we had all these buildings that weren't being used, and at one point, before we started the village, the board was faced with the task of either taking the buildings down or trying to find some use for them. And that's when we came up with a plan for the village. The board came up with a plan for the village, and it worked out fine. It took a lot of effort and a lot of time, and to get all that done. But we got what we got here today, and I know the Masonic Order is proud of it. I know that, and I know the folks who were involved in it are very proud of it too. So the girls are on the east side,
And the boys on the west side.
and the boys on the west side. And
I never looked at it before.
if you notice when you go in the homestead, right over the window, or the doorway to the basement, on one side it says girls, on one side it says boys.
No, I didn't know.
And when they marched into that was a central dining hall, when they marched into the dining hall, the boys went in on one side, up the stairway to the dining hall, and the girls went in the west side. But when you get the alumni together, you hear about all the boys that slipped over on the girls' side and the lights were on. And I'm sure that happened a lot. You hear some great stories from that alumni. I always enjoyed that. They were supposed to meet this weekend here. They were always, the alumni would always meet on the last weekend on Friday through Sunday. And the home would always furnish some dinner for them, some function for them while they were here. And they had some great stories to tell. It was very interesting to sit down and listen to them talk. And on that film, The Little City Beautiful, that I think most of you have or have seen, you can hear some of those stories. One of the ones, Henry Reed and Marion Reed. Marion was the managing editor of the Masonic Homes Journal until he retired back in the early 80s, early 2000s, I think, when Marion retired. They were raised here at home. I worked with an engineer. I mentioned this, John Henry Cole, he was a vice grand master. He set up several funds. He set up the Scholar Benevolent Fund to help the Grand Lodge with this charitable endeavors. He also set up a scholarship fund for the home here for those young kids, and it was used to help educate those kids who felt they needed to go on to a higher education. I worked with a resident engineer for 20 years in Franklin. He and his brothers were raised here at home and educated through that fund that was set up. And that's what later it was converted to assist the nursing facilities here at home. I think it's now been incorporated in with another fund, and they're still using that for that purpose to upgrade nursing staff at the home. So, there's so much history here. It's hard to sit down and put it all together into one package and roll it out to you. It's just amazing. And there was a St. John's Day League used to have picnics here on campus,
Okay.
and they formed early on. In fact, the St. John's Day League, Preston Lodge had a lot to do with that right from the very beginning when the concept of the home came up. Preston Lodge was an old lodge. 281, I think, is my number. But they really took on the project of the home and formed the St. John's Day League Incorporated. It was a fundraising operation still in existence. The home now has it. They had a picnic here, and I think a lot of the little villages remember that. They used to come over and picnic out in the center of the campus. It used to be 4 days. It would go for 4 days, and then lodges come in and have booths set up for different things, fish fries, and this kind of thing, and then have rides and that. But once we developed into the villages and leased the homestead, we renovated the homestead and leased it to Masterson's from outside catering facility. It didn't really fit well to have rides out there doing that, so that went away. But they made big contributions every year towards your home, and then they did a fund they did a people litter once a year, which raised several $100,000. So that was the income. The stage area for Garden Hall. We're backing up.
Yep, I think so.
Yeah. They did performances on the stage. I know that was back. That was taken from the stage, as you can tell. But that was Garden Hall, and another floor was added. That's the old school building, Garden Hall. That name's James Garnett.
Yes.
But the floor was put in that to give you those other apartments that on the second floor has those arched windows in. It's really nice apartments over there if you've never seen them. They're beautiful apartments in Garnet Hall. My wife was really crazy about that when it was done. She thought that was really great. There were kind of gable ceilings, and arched windows. But the buildings were all named for after we knew them as colleges, college 1 through 9, and when Gary was CEO, they decided they ought to all be named, so they named them after different ones. Hepburn Hall was named after Hannah Hepburn. She was she was a big fundraiser when the home was built. She had a society that she formed fundraising for the home, and she was a nurse here at the home. So they were Hepburn Hall, and Garnet Hall was after James Garnet, and so they were all Hauser Hall was after Gus Hauser. It was College 2. I knew it was College 2. The Grand Lodge office building, they just moved off the campus. Our Grand Lodge, which I thought still should be here. The Grand Lodge bought and constructed a building downtown Louisville. For Dr. Circles, that I mentioned earlier, was the Grand Master. At the time, they built a building down on 4th Street and kept it until 1977. They outgrew that building, and at that time these cottages were all empty. So to make use of one, they leased Cottage 2, which is actually between the Garnet Adams Hall and Boat Hall, and moved the Grand Lodge office in there. We had a museum upstairs. I'd taken some paddle, I'd taken to the museum, kind of a mini Masonic museum over there. And they were there until about 4 years ago. They decided to move off campus, so they're out off the Bank Lane now.
Was Hepburn Hall number 1?
No, it's number 9.
So on the other side, Finch Hall would be number 1.
Pitch Hall, that was administration building.
Okay.
There were, that always started. One thing, if you notice on this college, I'm not really an antique digger, but that Brookwood, Tile, all of these colleges had, and Fitch Hall, the fireplaces were done with that Brookwood Tile. From the original campus of Joseph and Joseph.
The windows are beautiful on the
Yeah. And Joseph was also an architect for the buildings. They worked for Nicolay and Soil and Navy. They were commercial architects for that. But Joseph was the original architect here, and the Olmsted brothers, who were Masons also. They did the landscaping and the layout of the campus. The campus here.
What's going to happen to the lodge building? Are they going to convert that?
Well, the original, yes, they slowed down because of the pandemic. They were going to convert that into apartments, but they used it for a short while to provide for when the schools were closed, to provide a place for the employees to drop their children off and for a kind of care center as a courtesy to those who are employed here. So yeah, in fact, it'll probably be discussed at the next board meeting about where to go with that, because it was put on hold after we had the lockdown. So now things are beginning to open up, and see it, other things beginning to happen. So.
You want to tell the connection between mission advancement and Lisa, or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, Lisa, you wanna say something there?
Okay, well, thank you all for having me today. My name is Lisa Ammon, and I work in our Mission Advancement Office. And our responsibility is to handle all of our annual giving campaigns, our community foundation grants, as well as corporate fundraising and that type of thing. So what we also are tasked with is alumni relations. So as Joe mentioned, we do have, well, we have in the past 2 years because of COVID, but we do have the alumni reunion every year, and that's a really fun time here on campus. And we're able to hear all kinds of stories. And there are some stories I hear that they used to steal a lot of peaches, and they would sneak downstairs to eat them. So it's kind of fun to hear all those stories. But then we're also in charge of the Walters Judy Scholarship Fund, which we raise funds to help our employees further their career in healthcare. And we also have events for Sproutlings. We do a golf scramble and a gala every year that raises operating and programming funding for Sproutlings. And then last, we also have, don't want to leave anything out, Masonic Care. And that helps our residents that are Masons and widows still if they need subsidized health care and housing and that type of thing. So that's our mission, and we try to further it. We have a lot of support, as Joe said, from the Grand Lodge of Kentucky and also Cosair Charities. So we really enjoy what we do here on campus, and if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer. Yes?
How can there be any participation with those alumni to hear their stories?
Well, we do have the alumni videos, and let's see, Little City Beautiful has a lot of those stories. So if you haven't seen the documentary, I know we probably have copies of it.
Ask Julie. If you don't have a copy, ask Julie. We have plenty.
Right. And so that's a great way to hear those stories. We usually do, each year, we have a reception for them on Friday night, and then a dinner Saturday night. And then we have a breakfast for them Sunday morning at the Olmsted. So if anybody's interested in attending and hearing those stories, you're welcome to join us for that if you just want to contact our office and let us know. Yes?
About how many alumni are there?
There are probably, I would say, anywhere from 30 to 50 left. So they're dwindling a little bit in numbers, but it's still a good time. Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to add something, only because a number of people that were here 4 years ago. Okay, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Might have remembered this experience. It was great. 150th year here on Masonic Homes. It was a great year. And one of the things that we did is we brought in, quote unquote, and they still use this word, the orphans from the days from the home. And they sat up here in this room. There were probably 7 of them. I'm looking. I'm the only one. Somebody help me out. 7,
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Maybe more. And they sat up and told stories. It was precious. And in my head, something that's 150 years old, I thought all of them had been gone for 40 years. And there were some that maybe, 10 or 20 years older than me, So it was amazing to hear their stories, to also see their youth. I know a number of them were still alive and kicking. So anyway, I just wanted to share that memory, that experience, and include other people who were here during that time. It was a great experience. So that's something to talk to other people. I know Ruby and Miss Whalen are shaking their heads. I can't remember who else was here that remembered that, but that was a great moment. Miss Smith, yes, Dot Smith would remember. That was just a great moment I remember here on campus, so I just want to add that piece.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for having me today.
I don't want to cut Mr. Conway off, so if there's anything else you might, you can just use this mic, that's okay? So I'm doing it.
Okay, I don't know how much farther I can go. Yeah, Chris?
I've always wondered, and I looked at the map, and I think it's the one called Adams Hall. You can tell where the schoolhouse was. but Adams Hall does not look residential. You know, I think the post office used to be in that one. That's the one I'm talking about. Over there, it's kind of square, and was it a maintenance hall or what?
Well, that was the print shop.
There's the print shop.
First
That was
floor.
the print shop, so it wasn't residential.
Yeah, and the basement, I believe it's the basement was the, one of the young men made it was a leather shop, and then it was Sonic glass above, on the upper level, as well as I remember.
And that would be on the right side for the boys.
And then the post office was over there.
Yes, I
For
remember
years.
when it wasn't. I remember when it moved over here to what used to be the gym. But I've always wondered about that building because
That was an industrial building,
that,
what they call an industrial
it
building.
looks like one, and I
And it
couldn't
was
figure
built-
out what it was. I didn't realize they had all that industry.
You know, they did quite a bit of printing here up until the computer age, and the computer age kind of shocked the printing business, and it was losing money. It was owned by the home, and it was actually a profit-making operation. It was a commercial printing company that printed Masonic Homes Kentucky, did publications for the Grand Lodge, but also done outside printing. And it had 3 nice presses in there. It just had a lot of new press when it was decided to close it down. So we had an auction. I was serving on the committee at that time, when we had to sell that out, and then there was we converted it to it's done all right later. At first, it was kind of wasn't doing all that well as far as it was part of the village project. Now there's a story about 25 years ago. Excuse me again. When Marion Reed was still managing editor of the Journal, one of the presses went shot. They only had 2 presses at that time. One of the presses went shot, and we were trying to raise money for a new press, about $100,000 is what we needed. And so we made an appeal in the Masonic Journal, or Masonic Appeal, for donations for a new press. Well, Marion got a check from a widow in California whose husband was a ward here at the home that worked in a print shop and got familiar with the print business and went to California and did very well. So she sent a check in for that press. So that's how we got the press. So that was another story from the home that just I remember. So yes.
What was Adams Hall built for originally?
It was an industrial building.
Industrial.
It was where the print shop was.
Oh.
Yep.
I got you.
They did.
I live in Athens, and if they want to see pictures of what they were doing, we have them in our hallways. The buildings are unlocked. You can come in and see our orphans working the presses, making the shoes, working the heavy equipment.
Mhm.
They're all in the walls in our hallways.
Yeah, that was interesting on that Adams Hall. Adams and his wife Julie, T.J. Adams and his wife, they were well liked administrators. They were administrators here for quite a while at the home when it first opened. They were well thought of individuals. But yeah.
We sold the land. It's now a very upscale complex on ground floor road. And we lost the exit to that, and we got kind of a semi-emergency exit that goes out on the Chenoweth Lane. Is there anything that the board's dealing with how to get the rear exit back?
That's been a real, what happened on that, kind of a long story, it started back before, I know what happened. This goes back in the 70s. Back in the 70s, we had I wasn't on the board at that time, but I'm familiar with what happened. The board wanted to put 16 apartments into Adams Hall, into Carnegie Hall, into the school building. To do that, we needed another entrance. We had that, and this is a long story though. The gate to Washington Square, there was a gate there, but it was open. It hadn't been used for years. It just laid there open. People would use it off and on, and it was not a problem because there wasn't much going on the campus here anyway. And people would use it to come in to go to the post office. And so the plan was to get an entrance back to Brownsboro Road. Well, we had closed that off when we converted that property back to the school. So the board spent a few $100,000 getting access back to Brownsboro Road. They had to move the ninth hole of the golf course and to the city golf course there. And we got the entrance, which they used for Mockingbird Square, which ended up being a good thing to do because it made the property valuable enough that we got the price for it, whether it was Mockingbird Gardens. But when they did that, for some reason they signed a binding element to close the gate on Washington Square. Now this I say it's back in the 70s. So that lay there dormant for all these years. Well, I got elected to as Grand Secretary in 1989. The gate was open, no problem. But we started the village project and we started getting older people on campus. Well, young kids were using, going to school and back, we're using that gate to miss the light down at Frankfurt Avenue, Chevrolet Road, and they were flying through the campus here, and we had some near accidents and got concerned about it, so we closed the gate. Well, that created a furor with Washington Square. They were all upset because the gate was closed. And I got threatened out there one day. The lady told me, said you can't close the gate because there's a post office. You got access to the post office. We can come in the front gate. But they were upset because the gate was closed. And then the administrator decided to put an electronic gate up there. And when they did, this binding element came forward. It had been enforced for 20 years, I guess. And so someone came up with this binding element that closed the gate. We've tried a number of times, and a number of people here were involved in some of those meetings that we had to try to get that binding element left because it's not practical to have a campus closed up when you don't have two entrances. So we're still working on that, but I don't know. Time will tell, I guess, what happened on that. But as far as right now, it's we can only use that for emergencies.
Thanks for that.
I don't know what else I got that I can offer. If someone has some, I know it's
Well, I just wanted to say, first of all, that if you know Joe, you'll continue these conversations. There were so many other things. I have been blessed by the hour and a half. We spent 2 hours and a half together, and I'm like, they were the best because just in conversation, the more you talk to him, the more you'll learn. Ask him about the statue, the Masonic statue. He's met the girl that is pictured in the statue. So that's one more story he didn't get to. He'll go home and think of 20 more stories. But it takes a lot of bravery to stand up in front of this many faces, especially when you're not a public speaker. So let's absolutely give him our support.